Alright, so next thing I'm going to basically lift this module out of here and get the blackwater tank installed. That's probably the primary thing I need to do today, is get that guy down in there. I also need to put in another through hole. I've decided, because I've actually bought an air conditioning system, I need to be able to bring in the raw water in to the system as well. So I'm going to put in another through hole just dedicated for the air conditioning system. So I do need to make sure that I'm going to have good access to water. So I haven't been down in here for a couple of years, and yeah, I'm sort of glad I'm not going to be doing there much more. I've got to install a blackwater tank down in there, and you'll notice there all that foam on the floor. I've actually excavated yet another through hole. Now I'm going to be using this through hole probably for my air conditioner raw water intake, and I do need one here for this reason. I've got another one on the other side. I'm sort of hoping that I'm not going to be spending much more time in here. I've got to get this blackwater tank that's up there in the cabin installed in here. And this one here, I've actually used a hole saw to basically drill through. But what I've also done is I've now cored it. So I'll be filling this with Cavasil and vinyl ester and basically making this solid glass all around the core here, so there's no chance of any problems. But the first thing I need to do is sand all the remaining foam off here and put in this filler, and then I'll be doing another 4 or 5 layers of solid glass of 600 double bias, just big patches that'll go in here and make it solid, just like I've done on the other side. So I've got this one here, and look at the amount of foam that's coming out of there. But this here is a solid glass through hole. That basically means I can just get a flat surface for the through hole to be mounted to. I've got a couple of mounts here for some pumps above them, and basically down in here is the water tank. So there's a lot going to go on down in here in this area. We'll also have a bilge pump in here with another through hole probably up on the wall up here, obviously up inside the boat. I've done an absolute stack of work down in here underneath this stair module. I've basically done a new through hole, and I've put in 2 ABS pads there for the blackwater tank to sit in. It's time to install this tank now. I'm going to get it in. I'm going to put some composite angle cleats to hold it in place, and then I'll be screwing it in a bit later on. But at least if I can get it in, then I can put this module back in where it belongs, and then it'll be happy days for me, because I'll have my staircase back in place and I can start to install the conduits that I've actually got together here. I'm going to have to seal some of these plywood holes that I've drilled. They're very, very important that you seal them with epoxy. So I'm going to mix up some epoxy and seal the edges of those. Very important that we don't have unsealed epoxy or wood grained edges. And they're the only 3 holes in the whole bulkhead, basically, that are going to be susceptible to any moisture or rot. But so I'll get this blackwater tank installed. Alright, so we've got 2 ABS pads there for the blackwater tank to sit on, and then it'll be further reinforced by the top here. Now I'm going to put in some sort of a bracket along the top here that's going to subsequently hold this whole thing in place. But for now, I'll get it in. There's absolutely no movement in there, but the nice thing is I've actually got it sitting off the wall of the boat. It's actually not touching the wall of the boat other than on the lip there. The base of it down there is actually sitting on those shims, and as you can see, there's absolutely zero movement, and it's not going to take much to secure this in place to make sure that if any case, you know, the boat's rocking and rolling around, it's not squeaking and making noise in there. But yeah, that's pretty good. I'm pretty happy with that. We'll get that glued in, and we'll go from there. Now, one thing I did find the other day was over here, I found a couple of new conduits that I'd sort of forgotten I'd put in. What it is actually a composite angle section above the tank that when I raised the floor up, I left a channel there. So it's not an enclosed channel, but it's going to be very, very good for plumbing and just running electrical wiring away from these tanks should we need to. Obviously we want to run plumbing in there. We don't really want to run electrical wiring in the fuel tank section apart from the sender. Try to avoid that at all costs, try to keep fuel away from electrics altogether. But that tank's now in. As you can see, the through hole on both sides, I've got access to pump out and to actually draw water in that compartment, and very easy access through the hole in the step. Part of the preparation for the electric install is to put in the facility for my hydraulic steering. Now the back of the helm pump actually comes out here, and it protrudes around about 3 or 4 inches into here. Now I need to make a facility for the hydraulic lines, which are copper pipes, to go straight down into this robe, which is actually Janet's pantry. So I'm going to invade into her pantry, and I'm going to put a rectangular PVC tube down through here, all the way down through the back of the pantry, and bring it out into the bottom there, where I can take it into the engine room and down towards the back for the rudders. But you've got to remember that this is all going to be blanked off. So this whole area will be blanked off here with a door that I can get into and access the back of the helm pump, to get in and access all of the back of the instruments and everything else, because we're going to have NMEA data and all this other stuff coming down here, and Ethernet cables and the like for the network. Everything's going to be in this area. There's going to be a hell of a lot going on here. I will also take a lot of the stuff down the other side into the back of the rear cabin, where there's actually a robe there that'll actually go straight down into all my conduits, so I can run all my wires straight to here from the electrical cabinet on the other side. And very important, so I can come straight down along and straight up here, inside here into this area here. But once this helm pump's installed, basically it's going to have its lines go straight down into this conduit, through this robe, and out into the engine room, and basically out to the rudders itself. But for now, I'll cut a hole in here. I'm going to epoxy a piece of, I think it's 90, so it's 100 by 50, 100 mil by 50, so it's basically a 4x2 in size, or a 2x4, getting this North American thing going. And essentially we're going to go straight down and then take it away out into the engine room. It's a bloody good job I can take the helm out because I wouldn't have got that pipe in otherwise. I would have had to put it in pieces and that wouldn't have been good. So down here we're going to go all the way through. We've got 2 more to cut to get it all the way down, and then I'll have to somehow secure it against the wall there, and then I'm going to try to glass over it, I think. Alright. So that's come through right into there. I'm actually going to have to put a bend in there, I think. That's going to have to... It's a bit hard to see, isn't it? Dark. That's going to have to end about there with a junction. That's cool. I'll leave that there for tonight. I get this message the other day, I'm here from Germany doing some work. Would you mind if I come down? So he's come down. This is Hannes from Germany.
Hey guys.
How are you, mate? What do you think of the whole thing?
It's a beast, seriously. It's massive. I mean, I came around the corner and it was like, I know that shed. And I knew that guy when I came up here, and the boat is just, it's awesome. And it's huge, and it's like a lot of work still.
Yeah.
So a lot of good videos to come.
A lot of good videos to come.
For us.
That's right. So the fellas come over on work and come down to visit me. I'm pretty privileged to have a visitor like Hannes to come down and say g'day. And we've discussed everything, haven't we, today?
Yeah, pretty much.
We've covered a lot of subjects. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if you see him building a boat in Germany pretty soon. Look out for a catamaran in northeast Germany. It could float down the Rhine, I guess. It does it? Is that your river?
Oh, that's not it.
Oh, you're on the other side. I see. My geography's out. I better get out of Huskisson and do a bit of travelling and try and get myself a bit educated. But yeah, he's only down for a few more days, and you're back home, are you?
Oh yeah.
Fantastic. It's good to have a good visitor, especially overseas visitors. We haven't had any for 2 years. It's been nice to see someone from Europe because we just simply haven't had anyone here because we are the lockdown country of the earth. Well done, mate. Well, thanks for coming down.
It was a pleasure. Thanks for the invite.
Good on you, mate. Catch ya.
It has been an endless run of arrivals over the last couple of weeks. Janet and I came to the conclusion we were better off to buy as much as we could before prices went up, and I think we got caught in the middle of some of the price hikes. But for now, I'm concentrating on our electrical system. We have pretty much everything needed to complete the structure of the boat, the propulsion. We've got the props, we've got the shafts, we've got everything else. And one thing we don't have everything for is the electrical system. And we've now settled on the complete Victron system. We thought we'll head into that ecosystem, and that is really quite an incredible set of gear. And there's so much information available with regard to the installation of it. So now, what we have settled on is the Lynx distribution system, and this is a pretty incredible system in that these are your bus bars, and your main bus bars for your power in and your DC loads and your inverter loads are actually in these. Now there'll be 2 of these joined to a shunt, which will allow for battery monitoring and working at the state of charge of our batteries and obviously everything else. But yeah, there's a lot of really fantastic things about this. This basically has a positive and negative bus bar built in, so I'm going to avoid a lot of the smaller ones coming straight from the battery, and it all talks to the Servo GX networking system. So the whole thing basically is integrated into a diagnostic tool which then talks to each other, and the network is pretty amazing. So I'm very excited to have these. Pretty much everyone now is buying this system. So I'll have 2 of these plus a VE CAN bus shunt, which will be my main distribution network off to my inverter and my DC and AC loads. So an important part of getting all this wiring done is making sure you can get access, and I've found that right throughout the boat. I've actually allowed myself the forethought when I've put the conduits in to be able to get access at every single stage. One of those main ones is going to be this helm station. Now, pretty detailed wiring and stuff having to come down from the helm, and we'll just have a look up here what I've got to do. I've got the engine controls, the plotter, the electric winch, possibly a second electric winch eventually, but for now it's going to be one, and I'll just convert it later on if we ever decide we need it. I don't really think we're going to need it. Obviously 3 or 4 controls, the windlass switch, the engine panels. So there's a hell of a lot of information and data
and power having to go down. It has to go somewhere, and I've tried to circumvent some of it firstly by this conduit here on the other side is actually for the steering. It will have the copper tubes running down in it, and then on this side I intend to put 2 of these rectangular 100 by 50 conduits in the base of the helm here. So they will come straight down here on the outside, and they go straight into this compartment here in the stern port cabin. So basically over here we have, if I put 2 conduits here, one there and one there, running down onto this chamfer panel and down into here. Underneath here I actually have the 2 conduits that run right through almost to the engine room. So there's a lot of information I can actually get straight down here, straight back along underneath that stair companionway and back into the main breaker board and fuses and the like up in there, and our inverter. So there also will need to be an NMEA backbone that runs from here somewhere all the way down and along to there, and also over to the other side for the other engine. So I've got to consider this. Now with NMEA, very importantly, you cannot have a device any more than 6 meters from the source. So your power lead or your backbone must be at least below 6 meters to the device, or it simply won't work. You'll end up with interference and the like, and or it simply won't work. They recommend 6 meters as the absolute maximum. So the shorter these things are, the better. So Zach and I are going to draw out a complete NMEA system for the entire boat before we even start to pull that backbone through. But certainly the power is a different story. We can basically fuse it at the breaker board. We can also fuse it here as a secondary fuse, and I've ordered a heap of those 12 position Blue Sea fuse blocks that will allow me to be able to fuse it at certain places so I can bunch stuff together. But the reality is what I really need to do is to make sure that the fuse, the first line of defense, is up in this area here in the dinette module before it even gets to the device, and that way we haven't got a whole heap of wire with the potential for fire. We want to try to keep fire risk at an absolute 0 in this install. Ultimately, there will be a hatch in here below the helm or below the steering wheel, and that'll allow me access to those conduits I'm about to put in. But I've left the helm and I've left that project, which I'm going to take that up into the factory and completely fair it and finish it so that it just integrates in, and then all I've got to do is tab it in. But I've actually left it removable so that I can do all this prior, and then this stuff can come later on. The important thing is that I can get the access and get all that wiring in without any trouble, so I can lift this whole thing out. And that's been really the key. This whole thing is that this thing is removable in one piece. And I've had a few comments about this helm, and a lot of you have said, why didn't you make it out of foam, lay up over the top of it, make a mold, pull a product off it? Well, that's okay to say that, but this has actually been a much better process, because this is just going to basically be fairing and painting, which I'm going to be doing anyway. You'd have to do that with a mold, and I'm not going to build another boat, so I don't really care what the next guy does. He might make a flybridge cruiser out of this, he might just have a basic helm. He can go in and build his own helm station. I'm more than happy to give him photographs and plans of this one, but this one sort of developed over time, and I'm very happy with the way that this structure has come together, because now I've got a very, very functional custom helm that is going to going to do the job for everything we need it to do. Totally stoked. I think it's actually a brilliant a brilliant bit of piecing stuff together. It's like a big Lego kit, but the one thing I've got now is I've got something that I can really, really use and be happy with the functionality. It's had a lot of thought go into it. The only trade-off was this. In hindsight, I would have actually made this straight up and across. I tried to get something where I could get the engine controls a little bit more of an angle up so you can see them, and that would have allowed me to move the throttle over here, or the engine control over here, and have a little bit more space. But you know, you're going to compromise in every instance when you build a boat.